The detention facility on Kepler 442b hummed with the sound of alien technology. Captain Sarah Chen sat in the cramped cell, her wrists bound with energy shackles that glowed blue in the dim light. The metal walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. She had been here for 3 days now, ever since her reconnaissance ship was shot down over the planet's northern continent. The Zephyrians had caught her during what was supposed to be a simple scouting mission. Earth's military wanted to know more about this new alien species that had appeared at the edge of human space. What they found was a civilization that viewed humans as nothing more than primitive animals. The Zephyrians stood nearly 8 feet tall, with gray skin that looked like polished stone and 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Their eyes were completely black, showing no emotion or mercy. Sarah heard footsteps approaching her cell. The sound was different from human footsteps, heavier and with an odd clicking noise. She had learned to recognize the difference between the guards and the scientists. This was definitely a scientist approaching. The cell door slid open with a hiss and Dr. Kethvar entered. He was one of the Zephyrian researchers who had been studying her since her capture. "Human specimen 001, Dr. Kethvar said in perfect English, though his voice had a strange metallic quality. "Today we begin your final education." "Education?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She had been trained for capture scenarios, but nothing could have prepared her for this. Dr. Kethvar's 4 arms moved independently as he set up a holographic projector in the center of the cell. "Yes, we have studied your species for many cycles now. We know about your wars, your violence, your primitive attempts at space travel. Today you will learn why humans are doomed to extinction." The hologram flickered to life, showing images of Earth from space. Sarah's heart clenched as she saw her home planet, looking so small and blue against the darkness of space. Then the images changed, showing human cities, human armies, human technology. Everything looked primitive compared to what she had seen on this alien world. "Your species believes it is strong," Dr. Kethvar continued, his black eyes fixed on Sarah. "You have conquered your own planet, reached for the stars, and now you dare to send scouts into our territory. But you understand nothing about true power." The hologram shifted again, now showing Zephyrian technology. Massive ships that could destroy entire solar systems. Weapons that could turn planets into dust. Cities that floated in space, defying the laws of physics that humans barely understood. Sarah tried not to show how impressed she was, but it was difficult. The Zephyrians were clearly far more advanced than humanity. "We have observed 12 species similar to yours," Dr. Kethvar said, walking around Sarah's chair. "All of them thought they were strong. All of them believed they could survive in the galaxy. All of them are now extinct." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What happened to them?" "We eliminated them," the alien scientist said matter-of-factly. "It is the natural order. Weak species must make way for the strong. Your humans are particularly weak. You depend on tools and machines because your bodies are fragile. You form emotional attachments that make you vulnerable. You waste resources on art and music and other meaningless pursuits." The hologram now showed recordings of the extinct species Dr. Kethvar had mentioned. Sarah saw beings that looked almost human, others that were completely alien, all of them now nothing but images in a Zephyrian database. The thought that humanity might join them in extinction made her stomach turn. "But we are not without mercy," Dr. Kethvar continued. "We will teach you exactly how your species will die, so that you may understand the futility of resistance. Consider it a gift, the knowledge of your own doom." Sarah straightened in her chair, meeting the alien's black gaze. "And what makes you think I'll just sit here and listen to your threats?" Dr. Kethvar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Because you have no choice. Your ship is destroyed. Your communication equipment is disabled. No one knows where you are. You are completely alone, human. And tomorrow the real lessons begin." The alien gathered his equipment and headed for the door. As it slid shut behind him, Sarah was left alone with the glowing shackles and her own thoughts. She thought about her crew back on Earth, about her family, about all the people who were counting on her mission to succeed. The Zephyrians thought humans were weak, that they would simply roll over and accept extinction. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sarah began testing the energy shackles, looking for any weakness. She had been trained in escape techniques, but these alien restraints were unlike anything she had ever encountered. Still, she had 3 days to figure them out. 3 days to study her captors and their technology, 3 days to plan her escape and warn Earth about what was coming. As she worked, Sarah couldn't shake Dr. Kethvar's words about the 12 extinct species. How many of them had tried to fight back? How many had simply given up when faced with Zephyrian superiority? She wondered if any of them had managed to surprise their captors the way she planned to surprise hers. The alien had made one critical mistake. He assumed that humans were like the other species they had destroyed. He assumed that being physically weaker meant being truly weak. He had no idea what humans were capable of when backed into a corner. Sarah smiled grimly as she continued working on her restraints. Tomorrow, Dr. Kethavar would begin his lessons on how to kill humans. But Sarah had some lessons of her own to teach. And she suspected that the Zephyrians were about to get an education they would never forget. The next morning came too soon. Sarah had spent most of the night working on her shackles, discovering that they responded to bioelectric signals from her nervous system. Every time she tried to force them apart, they tightened automatically. It was brilliant technology, but like all technology, it had weaknesses. She just needed more time to find them. Dr. Kethavar arrived precisely at what she assumed was dawn on this alien world. He brought with him a different set of equipment today, including what looked like a surgical table and various instruments that made Sarah's skin crawl. The alien scientist seemed pleased as he set up his demonstration area. "Today, human, you learn about your physical limitations," Dr. Kethavar announced. "Your species is remarkably fragile compared to others we have encountered. Observe." The hologram activated again, this time showing detailed anatomical scans of a human body. Sarah recognized the medical imaging technology, though the Zephyrian version was far more advanced than anything on Earth. Every organ, every bone, every muscle fiber was displayed in perfect detail. "Your skeletal structure is weak," Dr. Kethavar said, pointing to the bones in the hologram. "A single blow from a Zephyrian warrior would shatter your ribs. Your muscles are insufficient for real combat. Your reaction speed is pathetically slow." He manipulated the hologram, showing comparisons with Zephyrian anatomy. The differences were dramatic. Sarah forced herself to watch calmly, even as the alien pointed out every weakness of human physiology. She had to admit he wasn't wrong about the physical differences. Humans were smaller, weaker, and slower than Zephyrians. But Dr. Kethavar was making the same mistake that many enemies of humanity had made throughout history. He was focusing only on raw physical power. But perhaps the most interesting weakness, Dr. Kethavar continued, is your emotional attachment to other humans. Watch this recording from our encounter with the Valdorian species. The hologram switched to show what appeared to be a battle scene. Tall, blue-skinned aliens that must have been Valdorians fought against Zephyrian forces. The Valdorians were clearly losing, but they continued fighting even when the battle was hopeless. Then Sarah saw why. In the center of their formation, they were protecting a group of non-combatants, probably civilians. The Valdorians could have retreated and lived to fight another day, Dr. Kethavar explained. Instead, they died protecting their weak. This emotional weakness made them predictable. We simply had to threaten their civilians and their warriors would sacrifice themselves uselessly. Sarah's jaw tightened. You targeted civilians? Efficiency, Dr. Kethavar replied. Why waste resources fighting warriors when you can eliminate their will to fight by threatening what they protect? Your human military manuals speak of something called rules of war. Such concepts do not exist for superior species. The hologram now showed the end of the Valdorian battle. The blue-skinned aliens were completely wiped out, their entire civilization reduced to scattered refugees who were later hunted down and eliminated. Sarah felt sick watching it, but she forced herself to pay attention to every detail. She was learning about Zephyrian tactics, and that knowledge might prove useful later. Your species shows similar emotional weaknesses, Dr. Kethavar said, bringing up files on human conflicts. You have concepts like honor, mercy, sacrifice for others. These will be your downfall when we attack your worlds. When? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. Soon, Dr. Kethavar replied. Our fleet is already positioning itself at the edge of your solar system. We have been watching your species for 10 of your years, learning your weaknesses. The invasion will begin in 30 Earth days. Sarah's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. 30 days. That wasn't much time, even if she could escape and warn Earth. But it was something to work with. She filed away every piece of information Dr. Kethavar shared, building a mental picture of Zephyrian strategy and technology. But I am getting ahead of myself, the alien scientist said. Today's lesson is about physical limitations. Let me show you how easily human bodies can be broken. Dr. Kethavar approached with one of his surgical instruments. Sarah tensed, ready to fight even with her hands bound, but the alien stopped just out of reach. Instead, he activated another hologram, this one showing detailed footage of human prisoners being tortured and killed. Sarah recognized some of the faces. They were from earlier reconnaissance missions that had never returned home. Captain Martinez lasted 47 minutes, Dr. Kethavar said, indicating one of the recordings. Lieutenant Wong survived 32 minutes. Commander Hassan lasted an impressive 71 minutes. All of them eventually broke, providing us with valuable intelligence about human military capabilities. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, fighting back rage and grief for her fellow soldiers. When she opened them again, Dr. Kethavar was studying her reaction with scientific interest. "Interesting," he said. "You show signs of emotional distress over the deaths of humans you never met. This confirms our behavioral models. Humans bond not just with individuals they know, but with their entire species, another exploitable weakness. You think caring about others makes us weak?" Sarah said quietly. "But you're wrong. Am I?" Dr. Kethavar tilted his head. "Explain how emotional attachment increases combat effectiveness." Sarah looked directly at him. "Because when you threaten what we protect, you don't make us weak. You make us dangerous." The alien made that metallic laughing sound again. "Dangerous? To us? Human, your entire species could not threaten a single Zephyrian battlecruiser. Tomorrow I will show you recordings of our weapons tests on captured human settlements. You will see exactly how powerless your people are against our technology." Dr. Kethavar began packing up his equipment, but Sarah wasn't finished. "Tell me something, Doctor. In all your studies of extinct species, did you ever encounter one that fought back harder when cornered?" "Fighting harder is irrelevant when fighting better is impossible," Dr. Kethavar replied dismissively. "Physical superiority always determines the outcome of conflict." "Always?" Sarah pressed. "In your entire galactic history, superior technology has never been defeated by inferior opponents?" Dr. Kethavar paused. "There have been isolated incidents where primitive species achieved temporary tactical victories through luck or environmental factors. But such victories are meaningless in the context of total war." Sarah smiled for the first time since her capture. "Temporary tactical victories, interesting. I'd like to hear more about those." The alien scientist looked at her suspiciously. "Why?" "Professional curiosity," Sarah replied. "If I'm going to die anyway, I might as well understand how the process works." "You said yourself this is an education." Dr. Kethavar considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Tomorrow I will include examples of primitive species attempting to resist superior forces. It will make their ultimate failure even more instructive." As the alien left her cell, Sarah continued working on her restraints. She had learned several crucial things today. The Zephyrian invasion fleet was 30 days away. They had been studying humans for 10 years. They had captured and tortured other human reconnaissance teams. And most importantly, there had been cases where primitive species had achieved victories against superior technology. Dr. Kethavar thought he was educating her about human weakness. Instead, he was giving her exactly the information she needed to plan humanity's survival. The alien was so confident in his species' superiority that he couldn't see the trap he was walking into. Sarah finally felt one of the energy shackles flicker. She was getting closer to understanding their mechanism. Soon, Dr. Kethavar would learn that underestimating humans was the last mistake he would ever make. The third day brought new horrors. Dr. Kethavar arrived with what appeared to be a massive database of recordings, his 4 arms working efficiently to set up multiple holographic projectors. Sarah had spent another sleepless night working on her restraints and was close to a breakthrough. The energy patterns were starting to make sense. "Today, human, you witness the futility of resistance," Dr. Kethavar announced. "I will show you exactly what happened to your species' first colonies." Sarah's blood turned cold. "First colonies? Did you think your reconnaissance missions were the first human presence we encountered?" The alien's black eyes seemed to gleam with satisfaction. "We discovered your colony ships 18 months ago, 3 vessels attempting to establish settlements in the Tau Ceti system." The holographic displays activated, showing images that made Sarah's heart sink. She recognized the design of the colony ships. massive vessels carrying thousands of civilians, including families with children. The ships looked tiny and fragile against the backdrop of space. The colonists were completely unaware of our presence. Dr. Kethavar continued. They had traveled for decades in cryogenic sleep, dreaming of new worlds and new homes. We allowed them to begin establishing their settlements. It provided an excellent opportunity to study human behavior under stress. The recordings showed peaceful colonists building homes, planting crops, and starting new lives. Children played in alien soil while their parents worked to create humanity's first foothold among the stars. Sarah watched families she would never meet living lives they didn't know were about to end. We began with subtle harassment, Dr. Kethavar explained. Equipment failures, communication disruptions, missing personnel. The humans adapted as your species often does, but they also began to show the emotional weaknesses we expected. The scenes changed to show the colonists becoming increasingly worried and fearful. Security patrols were established. Families stayed closer together. The joy of a new world was replaced by the constant fear of an unknown threat. Then we revealed ourselves, Dr. Kethavar said, and the hologram showed the moment first contact turned into a nightmare. Zephyrian ships descended from the sky like metallic predators. The colonists tried to communicate, sending peaceful greetings and offers of friendship. The response was immediate and brutal. Energy weapons that turned buildings to slag and killed dozens of civilians in seconds. Sarah watched in horror as people she had never met ran screaming for their lives. The interesting part, Dr. Kethavar noted clinically, was how quickly they organized resistance. Within hours, civilian engineers were trying to weaponize construction equipment. Scientists were attempting to develop countermeasures to our technology. Even non-military personnel took up arms. Sarah felt a surge of pride despite her horror. Even facing impossible odds, humans had fought back. But the recordings showed how hopelessly outmatched they were. Makeshift weapons against advanced alien technology. Courage against overwhelming force. They lasted 37 days, Dr. Kethavar continued, much longer than our projections suggested. Their resistance was creative. They used their knowledge of the local environment against us, collapsed cave systems to trap our ground forces, redirected rivers to flood our positions, even turned their own nuclear power plants into weapons. Despite everything, Sarah found herself taking notes mentally. The colonists had found ways to hurt their technologically superior enemies. Dr. Kethavar spoke of these tactics with dismissive amusement, but Sarah could hear something else in his voice, a grudging respect for human ingenuity. The second colony lasted 49 days, Dr. Kethavar said, bringing up new recordings. They had learned from intercepted communications with the first colony. Their preparations were more sophisticated. They had weaponized their entire settlement before we even began the attack. These colonists had turned their new world into a fortress. Every building was a bunker. Every civilian was armed and trained. Children as young as 10 knew how to maintain weapons and fight alongside adults. It was heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. They actually managed to destroy 3 of our ground assault vehicles, Dr. Kethavar admitted. Their improvised explosives were surprisingly effective, and their willingness to sacrifice themselves to protect others caused significant tactical difficulties. Sarah leaned forward. Difficulties? For your superior technology? Dr. Kethavar's expression hardened. Temporary setbacks only. Their emotional attachments made them predictable, remember. Once we threatened their children, the adults became reckless in their attempts to protect them. The recordings showed the final battle of the second colony. Human defenders fighting room by room, corridor by corridor, never giving up even when defeat was certain. Sarah watched a mother shield her child with her own body, a father detonate explosives while surrounded by enemy forces, teenagers barely old enough to fight standing their ground against alien warriors twice their size. The third colony, Dr. Kethavar said, his tone becoming more serious, lasted 68 days. They had apparently developed new tactics based on intercepted intelligence from the first 2 attacks. The third colony had transformed their entire settlement into an underground complex. They had studied Zephyrian technology and developed specific countermeasures. Most importantly, they had learned to fight dirty, using guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and psychological warfare. They began targeting our supply lines, Dr. Kethavar explained, and Sarah could hear irritation in his voice. Small teams would infiltrate our positions and plant explosives. They learned to jam our communications, They even managed to capture several of our soldiers and extract tactical intelligence. Sarah felt a grim satisfaction. The third colony had learned that technological superiority meant nothing if you couldn't maintain your equipment or coordinate your forces. They had turned the Zephyrian strengths against them, but in the end, Dr. Kethavar said, they still died. All of them. Technology always prevails over primitive tactics. Does it? Sarah asked quietly. You said they lasted 68 days. That's more than twice as long as your projections. Irrelevant, Dr. Kethavar replied, but Sarah could see that he was uncomfortable with the topic. The outcome was never in doubt. Sarah pressed her advantage. But your casualties increased with each colony. Your operation took longer. You had to commit more resources. That sounds like learning and adaptation to me. Dr. Kethavar was silent for a moment, then activated another holographic display. Perhaps you would like to see what happened to the families personally. The children were particularly interesting subjects for our behavioral studies. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The alien was trying to break her spirit with images of dead children, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, she focused on what she had learned. 3 human colonies had fought back with increasing effectiveness. They had found ways to hurt their enemies and force them to adapt their tactics. Most importantly, Dr. Kethavar had admitted that the Zephyrians had suffered casualties and setbacks. That meant they could be beaten. It would take time, planning, and sacrifice, but it could be done. Show me, Sarah said, opening her eyes and meeting Dr. Kethavar's gaze. Show me everything. I want to see exactly how my people died. The alien looked surprised by her response. He had expected her to break down to beg him to stop. Instead, she was demanding to see more. Sarah smiled grimly as she realized she had just learned something else important about her captors. They didn't understand humans at all. Dr. Kethavar spent the entire 4th day showing Sarah detailed recordings of human suffering and death. He seemed to take scientific pleasure in documenting exactly how each colonist had died, analyzing their final moments for behavioral patterns and emotional responses. But with each horrific image, Sarah only grew more determined. Fascinating, Dr. Kethavar said as he showed footage of the final moments of the 3rd colony. Even when facing certain death, humans continue to exhibit protective behaviors toward their offspring. This female attempted to shield her child even after sustaining fatal wounds. Sarah watched the recording without flinching. The woman in the image was someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. She had traveled across the galaxy seeking a better life for her family, only to die defending them against monsters. Sarah committed every detail to memory, adding another name to the list of people she would avenge. Your lack of emotional response is unexpected, Dr. Kethavar observed. Previous human subjects became hysterical when shown similar recordings. Maybe you're not as good at reading human emotions as you think, Sarah replied. The alien studied her with his black eyes. Or perhaps you are defective. Military conditioning can sometimes suppress normal emotional responses. No matter. Tomorrow we begin the final phase of your education, which is practical demonstration, Dr. Kethavar said with what might have been a smile. You will experience firsthand the methods we will use to eliminate your species. After the alien left, Sarah finally made her breakthrough with the energy shackles. She had discovered that they responded to specific brainwave patterns. Stress, fear, and aggression made them tighten, while calm meditation made them looser. It was elegant technology designed to keep prisoners helpless by using their own emotional responses against them. But Sarah had trained in meditation techniques as part of her military conditioning. She spent the next several hours practicing controlled breathing and mental discipline, gradually teaching herself to maintain the precise mental state that would weaken her restraints. By the middle of the night, she was able to slip one hand free. Working quickly and quietly, Sarah examined the cell's security systems. The Zephyrians had built their prison to contain species that relied on brute force, not careful observation and technical knowledge. The door controls were sophisticated but not impossible to understand, especially for someone who had spent years studying alien technology. More importantly, Sarah had been carefully mapping the layout of the facility during Dr. Kethavar's visits. She knew where the main corridors were, where the guards were stationed, and where the alien kept his equipment. She had even identified what looked like a communications array on the upper levels of the building. But she didn't escape. Not yet. Sarah had a different plan. The next morning, Dr. Kethavar arrived to find her apparently still securely restrained. She had spent time before dawn working the shackles back into position, making them appear locked while maintaining the ability to free herself quickly. The alien scientist brought new equipment today, devices that Sarah recognized as torture instruments. "Today you experience what awaits your species," Dr. Kethavar announced. "We will begin with low-level pain induction and gradually increase intensity. I want to document exactly how much suffering a human can endure before psychological breakdown occurs." Sarah tensed as the alien approached with a device that sparked with electrical energy. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Dr. Kethavar was focused on his equipment, his back turned to her as he prepared his instruments. He had no idea that she could free herself at will. "You know," Sarah said conversationally, "I've been thinking about those colonies you destroyed. Have you?" Dr. Kethavar replied absently, still adjusting his torture device. "Especially the third one. 68 days of resistance. That's impressive for a primitive species, don't you think?" "Ultimately meaningless," Dr. Kethavar said, turning toward her with the activated device. "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "But I noticed something interesting in your recordings. Your casualties weren't random, were they? The humans had learned to target specific Zephyrian vulnerabilities." Dr. Kethavar paused, the electrical device humming in his hand. "What do you mean?" Sarah smiled. "They figured out that your gray skin conducts electricity really well. That's why their improvised electrical weapons were so effective. They also learned that your forearmed coordination breaks down when you're injured. Lose one arm and the other three become less effective." The alien's expression grew wary. "How could you know that?" "Because you showed me, remember? All those detailed recordings? I've been watching very carefully." Sarah's voice became harder. "I also noticed that your species has a critical weakness you're not even aware of." "Impossible," Dr. Kethavar said. But he was backing away from her now. "You're so convinced of your own superiority that you never consider the possibility of being wrong." Sarah continued. "Right now you're wondering how a restrained prisoner could possibly threaten you. You're running through scenarios in your head, trying to figure out what I could possibly do while locked in energy shackles." Dr. Kethavar's forearms moved to defensive positions, but he still held the electrical device. "You are secured. The shackles cannot be removed without the proper authorization codes." "You mean these shackles?" Sarah asked and slipped both hands free. The alien's black eyes widened in shock. He immediately activated an alarm on his belt, but Sarah was already moving. 4 days of careful observation had taught her exactly how Zephyrian reflexes worked. They were fast, but they relied on their forearmed coordination. Disrupt that coordination, and they became clumsy. Sarah grabbed the electrical torture device from Dr. Kethavar's hand and jammed it against his neck. The alien's gray skin conducted the electricity perfectly, just as she had observed in the colony recordings. Dr. Kethavar convulsed and collapsed, his forearms twitching uncontrollably. Sarah quickly searched the unconscious alien, finding security cards and what appeared to be a personal communication device. She also discovered something even more valuable, a data pad containing detailed files on Zephyrian military operations, including the invasion fleet heading toward Earth. The alarm was still blaring, and she could hear guards approaching. Sarah dragged Dr. Kethavar's unconscious body to the door and positioned him as a shield. When the first guard appeared, she was ready. The Zephyrian warrior was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor plating. He carried what looked like an energy rifle and moved with predatory grace. But he hesitated when he saw his unconscious scientist, and that hesitation was all Sarah needed. She threw the electrical device at the guard's head, not to injure him but to distract him. While he instinctively brought up his arms to block, Sarah rolled behind Dr. Kethavar's equipment table. The guard's energy blast turned expensive scientific instruments into molten slag, but Sarah was already moving again. The Zephyrian warrior was strong and fast, but he was also predictable. Like all members of his species, he relied on overwhelming force rather than tactical thinking. Sarah used the confined space of the cell against him, making him stumble over equipment and furniture as she stayed just out of reach. When the second guard arrived, Sarah was ready for him too. She had learned from watching the colony recordings that Zephyrians had excellent individual combat skills, but poor coordination when working together. They got in each other's way, especially in close quarters. Within minutes, both guards were unconscious. their own weapons turned against them. Sarah quickly gathered everything she could carry: Dr. Kethvar's data files, communication equipment, and detailed information about the facility's layout. She had what she needed to escape, but more importantly, she had something else. She had a plan that would teach the Zephyrians exactly what happened when you underestimated humanity. The invasion fleet was 26 days away from Earth. That gave her just enough time to turn Dr. Kethvar's lessons into a weapon that would save her species. The alien had wanted to educate her about human weakness. Instead, he had shown her exactly how to destroy his people. Sarah moved through the Zephyrian facility like a ghost. The datapad she had stolen from Dr. Kethvar contained detailed maps of the complex security protocols and, most importantly, communication codes for contacting the invasion fleet. The aliens had been so confident in their security that they never considered a primitive human might gain access to their most sensitive information. The facility was larger than she had realized. Dozens of levels extended deep underground, containing laboratories, holding cells for other prisoners, and what appeared to be a massive data storage center. Sarah's military training kicked in as she planned her route to the communications array on the upper levels. But first, she had another priority. Following the facility map, Sarah made her way to the prisoner detention area. If the Zephyrians had captured her, there was a good chance they had other human prisoners as well. She couldn't leave without checking. The detention level was eerily quiet. Most of the cells appeared empty, their energy barriers dark and inactive. But as Sarah moved deeper into the complex, she began to hear sounds, voices speaking in languages she didn't recognize, and occasionally, heartbreakingly familiar English. Day 418, a weak voice said from one of the cells. Sarah's dead. They showed me the recordings. My team is gone. Sarah's heart stopped. She recognized that voice. Commander Richardson? The voice fell silent for a moment, then became urgent. Who's there? Are you human? Sarah activated the cell's viewing port and saw a gaunt man in a torn flight suit. Commander James Richardson had been declared missing in action 8 months ago during a deep space reconnaissance mission. His ship had simply vanished without a trace. Commander, it's Captain Sarah Chen, Earth Space Command, she whispered. I'm getting you out of here. Richardson's eyes widened with disbelief, then hope. Chen, but they told me. They showed me recordings of your capture, your death. I'm very much alive, Sarah said, working on the cell's locking mechanism with tools she had taken from the unconscious guards. And I'm about to make these aliens regret they ever heard of humanity. There are others, Richardson said urgently as his cell door opened. Lieutenant Park is 3 cells down. Ensign Volkov is in the medical wing. They've been experimenting on him. Sarah felt cold rage building in her chest. How many others? At least a dozen that I know of. Maybe more in other sections. Richardson stepped out of his cell, moving stiffly after months of confinement. Sarah, they're planning something big. An invasion fleet. I heard them talking about it during interrogations. I know, Sarah said grimly. 26 days until they reach Earth, but we're going to stop them. They quickly freed the other prisoners. Lieutenant Park was barely conscious but alive. Ensign Volkov was in worse shape. The Zephyrians had been testing various toxins on him, but his strong constitution had kept him alive. There were also prisoners from other species, survivors from civilizations that had already been destroyed. We have to warn Earth, Richardson said as they gathered in an empty corridor. If we can reach the communications array, that's not enough, Sarah interrupted. Warning Earth won't stop the invasion. The Zephyrians are too advanced. We need to do something they'll never expect. Sarah showed them Dr. Kethvar's datapad, scrolling through files of tactical information, fleet compositions, and communication protocols. They've been studying us for 10 years, learning our weaknesses. But they've also revealed their own weaknesses without realizing it. What do you mean? Park asked, still weak but alert. Sarah smiled grimly. Dr. Kethvar spent 4 days showing me recordings of destroyed civilizations. He thought he was teaching me about human weakness, but he was actually giving me a complete tactical briefing on Zephyrian military doctrine. She brought up the recordings of the 3 destroyed colonies on the datapad. Look at this. Every battle follows the same pattern. They rely on overwhelming technological superiority and psychological warfare. They target civilians to break military morale. They use their advanced weapons to destroy infrastructure. Standard alien invasion tactics, Richardson observed. Exactly. And that's their weakness, Sarah continued. They're fighting the same war they've fought 12 times before. They've never encountered an enemy that could adapt and learn from their mistakes. Sarah accessed more files on the datapad, finding detailed technical specifications for Zephyrian weapons and ships. But we have something they've never faced before. We have their own intelligence data. The freed prisoners gathered around as Sarah outlined her plan. It was audacious, desperate, and probably suicidal. It was also the kind of plan that only humans would be crazy enough to attempt. Their invasion fleet is organized around 3 massive command ships, Sarah explained. Each ship coordinates attacks on specific regions of Earth. If we can disable the command ships, the rest of their fleet becomes unorganized and vulnerable. How do we disable ships that are still 26 days away? Volkov asked weakly. Sarah's smile became predatory. We don't attack the ships. We attack the commanders. She showed them detailed files on the Zephyrian command structure. The invasion fleet was led by 3 war commanders who made all tactical decisions. More importantly, these commanders regularly communicated with the research facility for updates on human behavioral analysis. Dr. Kethvar has been providing psychological profiles to help the fleet commanders plan their attacks, Sarah explained. They trust his data completely, so we're going to give them exactly the kind of data they expect. False intelligence? Richardson asked. Better than that, Sarah replied. We're going to convince them that humans have a critical psychological weakness that can be exploited. Something so tempting that they'll change their entire invasion strategy to take advantage of it. Sarah accessed the communication array controls on the data pad. We're going to tell them that humans become completely helpless when separated from our technology. That if they disable our computers and communication networks, we'll surrender immediately rather than fight. Park looked skeptical. Will they believe that? They want to believe it, Sarah said. It fits their preconceptions about weak species. And Dr. Kethavar has been building this narrative for years. One final report confirming human dependence on technology will seem perfectly reasonable. Sarah began composing the false intelligence report, carefully crafting language that would sound like Dr. Kethavar's scientific analysis. She described fictional experiments showing human psychological breakdown when separated from technology. She provided fake data about surrender rates during simulated communication failures. Most importantly, she recommended that the invasion begin with coordinated cyber attacks to disable human infrastructure, followed by a 48-hour waiting period to allow human morale to collapse before ground forces made their assault. 48 hours? Richardson asked. Sarah's eyes gleamed. 48 hours for Earth's military to prepare for an enemy that's just revealed its exact position and tactical intentions. She encrypted the false report using Dr. Kethvar's personal codes and transmitted it to the invasion fleet. Then she began her second transmission, this one to Earth's emergency command frequency, using codes that only Sarah and a handful of other deep space reconnaissance officers knew. The message to Earth was simple: massive alien invasion fleet en route, arriving in 26 days, detailed tactical intelligence attached, prepare for coordinated cyber attack followed by ground assault. But Sarah's plan wasn't finished yet. Now we disappear, she told the other prisoners. The Zephyrians are about to discover their research facility has been compromised. When they do, they're going to assume we died trying to escape. We need to make that assumption seem correct. Sarah led them deeper into the facility, following maintenance corridors and service areas that didn't appear on the main security maps. If they could stay hidden long enough, they might be able to gather even more intelligence or find additional ways to sabotage the invasion. More importantly, Sarah had one more lesson to teach Dr. Kethvar and his people. They thought they understood human nature. They believed they had identified all of humanity's weaknesses. They were about to learn that the greatest human strength came from the thing they thought was humanity's greatest weakness, the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. The invasion fleet was still 26 days away, but the real war had already begun, and for the first time since this nightmare started, humans were winning. 25 days later, War Commander Zethkal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main viewing screen. The blue and white planet looked exactly as their intelligence reports had described: beautiful, vulnerable, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. His invasion fleet hung in space around him like predatory birds, 1,200 ships ready to deliver swift death to another primitive species. All vessels report ready for the cyber warfare phase, his communications officer announced. Human communication networks are identified and targeted. War Commander Zethkal nodded with satisfaction. Dr. Kethvar's final report had been invaluable, confirming what they had long suspected about human psychology. The species was completely dependent on their primitive technology. Disable their computers and communication systems and they would collapse into helpless panic within hours. Begin the cyber attack, Zethkal ordered. All frequencies. Complete communication disruption. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed a coordinated electronic assault on Earth's digital infrastructure. Powerful jamming signals and data viruses flooded every human communication channel, from military networks to civilian internet connections. Within minutes, Earth's global communications went completely silent. Zethkal smiled as his tactical display showed successful system penetration across the planet. Excellent. Now we wait 48 hours for human morale to collapse, then begin ground assault operations. But something was wrong. Commander, the sensor operator called out, his voice uncertain. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from Earth's orbital platforms. What kind of energy signatures? They appear to be powering up weapons systems, sir. Zethkal frowned. According to their intelligence, Earth's orbital defenses were purely defensive, designed to stop asteroids and space debris, not enemy fleets. They posed no threat to Zephyrian ships. Insignificant, he decided. Primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields. But over the next few hours, more troubling reports began filtering in. Earth's military forces were not collapsing into panic as predicted. Instead, they seemed to be following predetermined emergency protocols, maintaining discipline despite the communication blackout. Even more concerning, massive industrial facilities across the planet were increasing production of something the Zephyrians couldn't identify. Commander, the intelligence officer reported, we're detecting unusual military movements on the surface. Large-scale troop deployments to strategic positions. This doesn't match our behavioral models for a demoralized population. War Commander Zethkal was beginning to feel uneasy. Contact Dr. Kethvar. I want updated psychological analysis. Sir, we lost contact with Research Facility 7749 25 days ago. Our automated probes indicate the facility was abandoned after a catastrophic power failure. Cold feeling settled in Zethkal's stomach. Dr. Kethvar's final report had been transmitted shortly before the facility went dark. What if something had happened to compromise their intelligence? Maintain position, he ordered. Continue monitoring human activity. As the hours passed, Earth's response became even more concerning. Instead of surrender, the humans appeared to be preparing for war. Military satellites that intelligence reports claimed were defunct suddenly activated, revealing sophisticated targeting systems. Ground-based installations began emitting powerful energy signatures that matched no known human technology. Commander, the sensor operator called out urgently. Multiple launch signatures from Earth's surface. Hundreds of missiles incoming. Impossible, Zethkal replied. Human missiles cannot reach our position. But he was wrong. The missiles weren't following ballistic trajectories. They were actively guided, maneuvering with precision that suggested advanced targeting computers. More disturbing, they seemed to be heading directly for the fleet's supply vessels. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Zethkal ordered. Activate point defense systems. The Zephyrian fleet scattered as the missiles approached. Their point defense systems should have easily destroyed the primitive human weapons. But these missiles weren't primitive. They split apart in flight, revealing multiple warheads that used unpredictable flight patterns to avoid defensive fire. The first explosions caught the supply convoy completely by surprise. 3 ships carrying critical trilithium reserves were destroyed instantly. Others suffered severe damage that left them unable to maintain formation. How is this possible? Zethkal demanded. Our intelligence indicated that humans lack advanced missile technology. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's on one of our own military frequencies. Put it through. The main viewing screen flickered, then showed the face of a human female in military uniform. War Commander Zethkal had never seen her before, but something about her confident expression made his blood run cold. Greetings, War Commander Zethkal, the human said with a slight smile. My name is Captain Sarah Chen, Earth Space Command. I believe you've been looking for me. Zethkal's 4 hands clenched involuntarily. This was the human who had escaped from Dr. Kethvar's facility. Somehow she had survived and made it back to Earth. You're probably wondering how we knew exactly where to find your supply ships, Sarah continued. Dr. Kethvar was very thorough in his educational program. He taught me everything about Zephyrian fleet organization, shield technology, and critical resource requirements. The tactical display showed more missile launches from Earth. This time they were targeting the invasion fleet's communication relays and sensor arrays. Each strike was precisely coordinated, hitting exactly the right systems to cause maximum disruption. You see, Commander, Dr. Kethvar made a critical error in his analysis, Sarah said. He assumed that human emotional attachments were a weakness. He thought our willingness to protect others made us predictable. He never considered that love and loyalty might make us more dangerous, not less. War Commander Zethkal watched in horror as his perfectly coordinated invasion fleet descended into chaos. Ships collided as communication systems failed. Formation discipline broke down as individual. Captains made desperate attempts to avoid the precisely targeted human missiles. Your species has never lost a war because you've never faced an enemy that truly understood you, Sarah continued. You rely on technological superiority and psychological warfare. You target civilian populations to break military morale. But most importantly, you always fight the same war. Another wave of missiles struck the fleet, this time targeting the main warships. But these weren't conventional explosives. They were electromagnetic pulse weapons designed specifically to overload Zephyrian shield generators. As the shields failed, follow-up strikes with conventional weapons began tearing through formerly invulnerable alien armor. We studied your tactics, Commander. 12 extinct species gave us 12 examples of what not to do when fighting Zephyrians. They tried to match your technological superiority. They tried to fight honorably. They tried to protect their civilian populations while maintaining military discipline. Sarah's expression became harder. We decided to try something different. We decided to fight like humans. The space around Earth erupted with weapons fire as the planet's hidden defenses revealed themselves. What Zephyrian intelligence had dismissed as primitive orbital platforms were actually sophisticated weapon systems, disguised to appear less threatening than they actually were. Massive railguns fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Directed energy weapons carved through alien hulls like paper. You wanted to teach us about human weakness, Sarah said as the flagship's shields began to fail under concentrated fire. Instead, you taught us about Zephyrian weakness. You're so confident in your superiority that you never consider the possibility of being wrong. You're so focused on your advanced technology that you forget wars are won by intelligence, adaptability, and determination. War Commander Zethkal realized with growing horror that his invasion fleet was being systematically destroyed by enemies he had completely underestimated. The humans hadn't panicked when their communications were cut. They had used the communication blackout to coordinate surprise attacks without being detected. And most importantly, Sarah concluded, you showed us exactly how to hurt you. Every recording Dr. Kethvar showed me revealed another Zephyrian vulnerability. Every tactical analysis gave us another piece of intelligence. Every demonstration of your capabilities showed us exactly how to counter them. The flagship shuddered as human missiles penetrated its failing shields. Explosions echoed through the corridors as critical systems began shutting down. Around them, the once mighty invasion fleet was burning in the vacuum of space. This is impossible, Zethkal whispered. We are the superior species. We have conquered 12 civilizations. Sarah's final words would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. You were the superior species, Commander, but you made one critical mistake. You gave humanity a teacher who showed us exactly how to destroy you. Dr. Kethvar wanted to educate me about the futility of human resistance. The main screen flickered as the flagship's power systems failed. In the dying Lee. The Zephyrian facility erupted into chaos within hours of Sarah's escape. Alarms blared constantly as security forces searched every level, every corridor, every maintenance shaft. Dr. Kethvar had been found unconscious in Sarah's cell, his precious research equipment destroyed and his data files copied. The facility's commanding officer, war leader Thakron, was not pleased. Sarah and the other freed prisoners watched the frantic search from their hiding place in an abandoned storage area deep within the facility's lower levels. The maintenance corridors had provided perfect concealment. and Sarah's stolen security codes allowed them to monitor Zephyrian communications without detection. They're mobilizing the entire garrison, Richardson whispered as he monitored their communication channels. 300 soldiers searching for a handful of escaped prisoners. Good, Sarah replied. The more resources they waste on us, the less they have available for invasion planning. But Sarah had bigger plans than simply hiding from their captors. Over the past 12 hours, she had been systematically accessing the facility's computer networks, downloading everything she could find about Zephyrian technology, military doctrine, and most importantly, the invasion fleet's exact composition and capabilities. Look at this, Sarah said, showing the others a detailed fleet manifest on her stolen datapad. 1,200 ships total, but only 60 of them are actual warships. The rest are troop transports, supply vessels, and support craft. Lieutenant Park studied the data with growing excitement. They're planning an occupation, not a war. They expect minimal resistance, Sarah nodded, which means they haven't prepared for a real fight. Their warships are designed for planetary bombardment and crowd control, not ship-to-ship combat with an enemy that knows their capabilities. She accessed more files, finding technical specifications that made her smile grimly. And look at this. Their ships require regular resupply of a rare element called trilithium to maintain their energy shields. Without it, their armor becomes vulnerable to conventional weapons. How regular? Volkov asked. Every 14 days, Sarah replied. The invasion fleet has been in transit for 6 weeks. They'll need to resupply within 72 hours of reaching Earth, or their shields will start failing. Richardson leaned forward. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Sarah's expression became predatory. I'm thinking that an invasion fleet with failing shields would be sitting ducks for Earth's orbital defense platforms. She began composing another message to Earth, this one containing detailed technical specifications for Zephyrian shield technology and the critical importance of trilithium resupply. But before she could transmit it, alarms began blaring with a new urgency. Attention all facility personnel. Dr. Kethavar's voice echoed through the corridors via the facility's communication system. The escaped human prisoners are still within the complex. We have sealed all exits and activated emergency containment protocols. They cannot escape. Sarah exchanged glances with the others. Dr. Kethavar was awake and apparently in charge of the search. That meant he was probably reviewing his missing data files and discovering exactly what information had been stolen. However, Dr. Kethavar continued, I wish to speak directly with the human-designated Captain Sarah Chen. I have a proposition for you. Sarah frowned. This was unexpected. You have impressed me, Captain Chen, the alien scientist continued. Your escape was ingenious and your tactical thinking shows promise. Therefore, I offer you a choice. Surrender yourself and your companions, and I will ensure that your deaths are quick and painless. Continue to resist, and I will make certain that your species' extinction is as prolonged and agonizing as possible. He's bluffing, Richardson said quietly. Sarah wasn't so sure. Maybe, but he's also scared. He knows I've seen everything in his files. He knows I've transmitted intelligence to Earth. Dr. Kethavar's voice continued. You have accessed our tactical databases, but you understand nothing. Your primitive species cannot comprehend the true scope of our capabilities. We have destroyed civilizations with technology far superior to yours. We have eliminated species that had been spacefaring for thousands of years before your ancestors learned to make fire. Sarah activated the facility's internal communication system. Using Dr. Kethavar's stolen access codes, her voice echoed through every corridor and chamber in the complex. Dr. Kethavar, she said calmly, thank you for the education. You've taught me everything I needed to know about your species. There was a moment of stunned silence before the alien scientist responded. You cannot hide forever, human. We will find you. I'm not hiding, Sarah replied. I'm working. She began broadcasting on all available frequencies, including the emergency channels that connected the research facility directly to the invasion fleet. Her message was simple but devastating. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Space Command, transmitting from Zephyrian Research Facility Designation 7749. I am providing our military command with complete tactical intelligence on the alien invasion force, including ship compositions, weapon capabilities, shield technology specifications, and critical supply requirements. Sarah could hear Dr. Kethavar's horrified gasp over the communication system. She continued broadcasting. To the Zephyrian invasion fleet, Your research facility has been compromised. Your tactical doctrine has been exposed. Your technological advantages have been neutralized. Earth knows you're coming, and Earth knows exactly how to stop you. Impossible. Dr. Kethavar's voice cracked with rage. Your species lacks the intelligence to understand our technology. Sarah smiled as she responded. You're right about one thing, Doctor. We are primitive compared to your species. We're weaker, slower, and less advanced. But you made a critical error in your analysis of human behavior. She paused, letting the tension build before delivering her final lesson. You assumed that emotional attachment was a weakness. You thought our willingness to protect others made us vulnerable. But those aren't weaknesses, Doctor. They're what make us dangerous. Sarah accessed the facility's power grid through her stolen codes, systematically overloading critical systems. Emergency lighting began flickering as she continued her broadcast. You showed me recordings of 12 extinct species. You wanted me to understand that resistance was futile. Instead, you taught me exactly how to fight you. Every species you destroyed made the same mistake. They tried to match your technological superiority. Explosions began echoing through the facility as overloaded power systems started failing. Sarah could hear Zephyrian voices shouting in panic as their sophisticated equipment began shutting down. But humans don't fight fair, Doctor. We adapt, we learn. We turn our enemies' strengths against them. And most importantly, we never give up when something we love is threatened. The main power grid collapsed, plunging most of the facility into darkness. Emergency power kicked in, but it would only last a few hours. Sarah had effectively crippled the entire complex with nothing more than stolen access codes and an understanding of Zephyrian overconfidence. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity, Sarah concluded her broadcast. We don't just fight back. We make you regret that you ever found us. Dr. Kethavar's voice over the communication system was barely controlled fury. You have accomplished nothing. Our invasion fleet will still destroy your world. Sarah's final words were spoken with quiet confidence that would haunt Dr. Kethavar for the rest of his life. No, Doctor, they won't. Because you taught me something else during our little educational sessions. You taught me that Zephyrians have never lost a war because you've never faced an enemy that understood you as well as I. Understand you now. The communication system went dead as the last of the power systems failed. In the darkness of the disabled facility, Sarah and her companions prepared for their final escape. They had everything they needed: detailed intelligence, tactical specifications, and, most importantly, proof that the supposedly invincible Zephyrians could be beaten. The invasion fleet was still 25 days away from Earth. But thanks to Dr. Kethavar's educational program, humanity now knew exactly how to win a war against a technologically superior enemy. The alien had wanted to teach Sarah about human weakness. Instead, he had given her everything she needed to save her species.